West Virginia is paying remote workers $12,000 to move there. Not a tax break, not a maybe someday incentive. $12,000 cash, plus another $2,500 for outdoor gear, deposited into your account for agreeing to live in a state most Americans treat as a punchline. And it's not a gimmick, it's a survival strategy. Meanwhile, Ohio is quietly turning farmland outside Columbus into America's next semiconductor corridor. $20 billion from Intel, with potentially $100 billion more coming. Arizona is building chip factories that will define the next decade of American technology, in a state that might run out of water before they're paid off. Here's the pattern nobody's talking about. While everyone obsesses over California's exodus and Florida's insurance crisis, 10 states have been making 10 different bets on what America is becoming. Some are betting on climate migration. Some are betting on federal money. One is betting that a billionaire family can manufacture culture from scratch. And one is betting that if you pay people enough, they'll move anywhere. 2026 is the year the rest of the country finally notices. This isn't speculation, this is data. Migration patterns, investment flows, infrastructure money landing in places that weren't on anyone's radar 5 years ago. By the end, you'll understand why the map is being redrawn, why the safe choices aren't safe anymore, and why the state everyone laughs at might be playing the longest game of all. If you're thinking about where opportunity is actually headed, not where it's been, hit subscribe. We're about to cover a lot of ground, starting in a place that got famous for lobster but is about to get famous for something nobody expected: surviving climate change. When people think about climate migration, they picture desperate moves away from somewhere, fleeing Miami's floods, escaping Phoenix's heat domes. What they don't picture is where those people are actually going. Look at this migration data. Maine's population grew 2.6% between 2020 and 2024. Sounds modest until you realize the previous decade was essentially flat. More importantly, it's adults aged 25 to 44 driving the growth, the demographic every state desperately wants. What changed? Remote work unlocked something Maine always had: quality of life that doesn't require a trust fund. Portland's food scene drew the first wave. Then came the math. A 3-bedroom house an hour from the coast costs less than a 1-bedroom in Cambridge. Here's the price cascade. Portland median $515,000. Expensive for Maine, but $200,000 below coastal Massachusetts. Bangor, $285,000. The mid-coast, Rockland, Belfast, Camden. Historic homes under $350,000 in towns with actual culture. But here's the 2026 angle: climate modeling. The University of Maine's Climate Change Institute produces research that reads like a real estate brochure written by scientists. While the Southwest fights water wars, Maine sits in what researchers call a climate refuge zone. Temperatures warming, growing season extending. The state is getting more livable, not less. One local put it perfectly: 10 years ago, we had 5 months of winter. Now we have 3.5. People from Massachusetts think that's too much. People from Minnesota think it's a vacation. Picture this: October in Camden. Fog lifting off the bay, lobster boats heading out, wood smoke in the air. The Victorian you toured costs less than your apartment. Trade-offs are real. Winters exist, rural broadband is spotty, healthcare access is limited. But for Americans thinking 20 years ahead, Maine moved up the list. And the data gets stranger from here. Our next state had the opposite problem: too much attention too fast from the wrong kind of money. Let me tell you about a pattern realtors across Montana keep describing. Someone sells their Denver condo in 2021, buys a place in Bozeman with mountain views for what feels like a steal. Tech job, remote forever, living the Yellowstone dream. 18 months later, property taxes doubled. Their favorite coffee shop closed, couldn't afford the rent increase. Half their neighbors are Airbnbs. The locals they befriended are all transplants from 2019, so they start looking at Missoula. That's Montana's 2026 story, the second act. The Yellowstone effect was real, and in some places, catastrophic. Bozeman's median more than doubled in 5 years. Locals got priced out by remote workers cosplaying as ranchers. But here's what's happening now. The bubble is forcing redistribution. Look at this price map. Bozeman, $785,000, effectively closed. Missoula, $525,000. Helena, $415,000. Great Falls, Montana's former punchline, under $300,000. The Yellowstone show taught Americans that Montana exists. That awareness doesn't vanish when one city prices out, it migrates. There's a tax angle too. No sales tax, low property taxes, permissive regulations. For high-income remote workers doing optimization, Montana offers financial advantages beyond the scenery. One local summed it up: Bozeman got the headline headlines. Missoula got the people who actually did the math. Trade-offs are real. Genuine winters, thin job market, limited diversity, expensive flights. But Montana's 2026 attention won't be about Yellowstone reruns. It's about where opportunity goes when the obvious places price themselves out. And that matters because our next state is doing something even stranger, turning film sets, spaceports, and 400-year-old food traditions into an economic identity that shouldn't work, but somehow does. Quick data blitz, because New Mexico's story is too weird to tell slowly. Film industry direct spending, $850 million annually. Netflix permanent production hub, Albuquerque. Tax rebates for studios, up to 35%. Jobs created, 11,000 plus. Spaceport America, yes, real name, yes, real spaceport, south of a town called Truth or Consequences. Virgin Galactic operates there. Spin Launch is testing kinetic launch systems. The space economy isn't theoretical, it's infrastructure. Albuquerque median home price, $370,000. One of the most affordable metros in the Southwest. Santa Fe median, over $700,000. But you're paying for arguably the most distinctive small city in America. Here's the before and after. 5 years ago, realtors sold to retirees and artists. Now, film industry workers, California tech refugees, people who just figured out this place exists. The food. 400 years of indigenous, Mexican, and Anglo fusion that can't be replicated anywhere else. The art scene in Santa Fe rivals cities 10 times its size. Los Alamos and Sandia Labs provide high-wage federal employment anchors. Trade-offs. Water scarcity is real. Public education ranks near the bottom nationally. Property crime in Albuquerque exceeds averages. Opportunity outside main metros drops fast. But the diversification play is working. Film, space, labs, tourism, lifestyle arbitrage against Colorado and Arizona. New Mexico is building multiple economic engines simultaneously. Picture this: Sunday in Santa Fe, sun dropping behind the Sangre de Cristos, adobe buildings turning pink, piñon smoke in the air. Your casita cost $425,000, a fortune for here, a joke compared to anywhere with this culture. The 2026 attention is coming. Too many industries growing in one overlooked place. But the next state is the opposite story. One city got so successful it started reshaping everything around it. And 2026 is when the ripples become impossible to ignore. Everyone knows Nashville blew up. Bachelorette parties, healthcare growth, no state income tax, we've heard it. What we haven't heard, what happens when a city gets so popular it reshapes an entire state? Here's the case for Tennessee beyond Nashville. Chattanooga built municipal fiber internet a decade ago, the fastest in America. That infrastructure investment is now paying compound returns. Tech companies that couldn't afford Nashville discovered a city with gigabit speeds and median prices around $340,000. The Southside District transformed from post-industrial decay into a legitimate innovation hub. Knoxville, University Town Energy, Smoky Mountains access, Oak Ridge National Lab nearby, median prices in the low 300,000s. Memphis, downtown has seen $700 million plus in development. St. Jude keeps expanding, FedEx provides stability, and $200,000 medians make it one of the most affordable mid-size metros in the South. The music heritage, Beale Street, Sun Studio, Stax, is cultural infrastructure money can't buy. Here's the case against. Summer humidity is brutal. Public transit outside Nashville is non-existent. Car dependency is total. And the state's cultural politics have made national news. Know what you're signing up for. Picture this: Saturday in Chattanooga. Coffee from a roaster that'd fit any hip neighborhood. Walking the Walnut Street Bridge while runners pass. Your two-bedroom in Southside, $1,600. Your buddy in Nashville pays $2,400 for something smaller. Your internet is faster than his. Tennessee's 2026 story isn't Nashville anymore. It's the proof that Nashville's success wasn't a fluke, it was a template. And if Tennessee shows what happens when success spills over, our next state shows what happens when the federal government decides to rebuild American manufacturing. This map is the giveaway. Look at where the money is actually landing. Stop whatever you're thinking about Ohio. The rust, the decline, the political cliches, set it aside. What's happening here will be studied in economics courses for decades. In 2022, Intel announced a semiconductor fabrication complex near Columbus. Not a plant, a complex. Initial investment, $20 billion. Potential expansion, $100 billion. This chart shows the money trail, and hundreds of supplier companies are following. Here's why this matters. Chip fabs aren't assembly lines. They're among the most sophisticated manufacturing facilities on Earth. Thousands of engineers, technicians, specialized workers. They anchor entire ecosystems. When Intel builds in Ohio, the supply chain follows. But here's the bigger story. story. This hit a state that was already stabilizing. Columbus has quietly been one of America's most resilient metros for a decade. Ohio State provides talent. Healthcare and insurance industries run deep. Cost of living never went crazy because growth was steady, not explosive. Look at these numbers. Columbus median $315,000. For a metro over 2 million. Cleveland, $220,000. The Cleveland Clinic alone employs 65,000. Cincinnati, $280,000. These are real cities with real amenities at prices that make coastal transplants do double takes. One local put it perfectly. My dad lost his job when the GM plant closed. My kid might work at Intel. Same county. That's insane. That's Ohio right now. Picture this. Friday in Columbus's short north. Galleries, restaurants that didn't exist a decade ago. Your warehouse condo costs $285,000. What your friends in San Jose paid for a parking space. Monday, you'll commute 18 minutes to a semiconductor supplier that didn't exist 3 years ago. The Rust Belt isn't rusting. It's being rebuilt in silicon. Trade-offs. Gray winters affect well-being. Smaller cities haven't benefited equally. And outside the 3 C's, opportunity thins out fast. But Ohio isn't asking to be loved. It's asking to be taken seriously. With billions in advanced manufacturing landing, that request is getting harder to ignore. Now here's where the list gets weird. Our next state didn't get billions from Intel or the federal government. It got a billionaire family who decided to turn their hometown into something unrecognizable. And somehow, it's working. Arkansas? Seriously? Yes, and by the end of this segment, you'll understand why the state that gave us Walmart might be giving us a legitimate next Austin competitor. Here's the before and after. Bentonville 2010 was Walmart's hometown and not much else. Bentonville now has a $450 million art museum, Crystal Bridges, with Rockwell, Warhol, and Rothko. It has a mountain biking trail system recognized as one of the best in North America. It has a downtown that wouldn't look out of place in Copenhagen. The Walton family poured billions into transforming their hometown. And here's the multiplier. Walmart requires thousands of vendors to maintain offices in Northwest Arkansas. Corporate professionals cycle through constantly. Some look around, do the math, and stay. Median home prices? $360,000. For a region with world-class outdoor recreation, 3 Fortune 500 headquarters, Walmart, Tyson, J.B. Hunt, and genuine cultural infrastructure. A realtor told us, people from San Francisco, Chicago, New York, paying 4 times as much for half the house back home. They visit, see Crystal Bridges, ride the trails, and their framework for Arkansas changes in about 2 hours. Picture this, Sunday in downtown Bentonville. Farmers market on the square. Cyclists with trail dirt on their legs. Later, you'll visit an art museum that rivals anything in cities 10 times this size. Your 3-bedroom costs $385,000. Trade-offs. The transformation is concentrated in Northwest Arkansas. An hour south, and you're in different economic reality. Humidity is oppressive. State education rankings are concerning. Politics are deep red. But the trajectory is unmistakable. Population nearly doubled since 2010. Median age is young, families, not retirees. The next Austin whispers aren't going away. Arkansas got transformed by retail money and trail bikes. But our next state story is even harder to believe because it got transformed by rockets. And nobody outside defense circles was paying attention. Here's a number that reframes everything about Alabama. Huntsville added 25,000 people since 2020. One of the fastest growing metros in America, not just the South, the country. Let's be clear about what Huntsville actually is. NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, Redstone Arsenal, Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, Blue Origin. The FBI is building a massive new campus. When the federal government needs something built, tested, or launched, the address is increasingly Huntsville, Alabama. Look at these numbers. Median household income, $70,000. One of the highest concentrations of engineers per capita in America. Median home price, $340,000. The math is almost absurd. High-paying aerospace jobs in a place that never got expensive. But Birmingham is part of this story too. UAB medical system is nationally recognized. Downtown has seen $4 billion in investment over a decade. Median home price, $265,000 for a city with real urban texture. One local. Everyone's surprised when they actually come here. They expect something from the 1960s. They find a space industry town living in the future. Picture this. Evening at campus number 805. A former middle school converted into breweries, restaurants, a climbing gym. Engineers debating orbital mechanics. Your mortgage is less than your rent was in Northern Virginia. Your career accelerated when you moved because defense contractors are desperate for talent. Trade-offs Trade-offs are significant: cultural baggage, conservative politics, education funding challenges, humidity you can wear. Outside Huntsville and Birmingham, opportunity thins fast. But Alabama's 2026 story isn't about changing minds on history, it's about the math. Aerospace jobs, low costs, real opportunity. The arbitrage is real. Now here's where the stakes get higher. Our next state is making the biggest bet of all, building the future of American technology in a place that might run out of water, and that contradiction is going to define 2026. Arizona is going to get enormous attention in 2026, not all of it positive. This is a state betting everything on one hand while sitting at a table that might not exist in 30 years. The bet? TSMC is building a $40 billion chip fabrication complex in Phoenix. Intel is expanding. The supply chain is following. By 2030, Arizona will produce some of the most advanced microchips on Earth. The catch, the one nobody puts in press releases: water. Look at this chart. Lake Mead at historic lows. Colorado River Compact being renegotiated under desperate circumstances. Groundwater depleting. And Arizona's response? Double down on growth. Bet that technology, conservation, and infrastructure will solve what physics and climate might make unsolvable. That tension is 2026's story. Every success headline comes with water caveats. Every water story acknowledges Arizona can't stop growing. High-wire act in real time. One Phoenix transplant put it bluntly: everyone asks about the water. Nobody asks about jobs paying six figures where houses still cost under $500,000. Maybe ask about both. Here's the price breakdown. Phoenix median $440,000. Elevated but stabilized. Tucson $350,000. Better water situation. Prescott in the Highlands. Escape from the heat. Flagstaff, mountain town, 4 seasons but $500,000 plus median. Picture this: January in Scottsdale. Breakfast on a patio, 72 degrees, mountains everywhere. In August, it was 118 for 3 consecutive days. People died. But right now, citrus blooming, desert air crisp, hard to argue with paradise. Trade-offs beyond water: sprawl requiring cars, summer heat that kills, housing requiring dual incomes. But Arizona won't fade. TSMC represents generational commitment. The question that matters beyond state borders: can human ingenuity outrun resource constraints? Can money buy time? And that brings us to the opposite story. Our next state isn't running from anything. It isn't gambling on anything. It's just quietly stacking advantages while everyone argues about the coasts. And 2026 might be when the secret gets out. Indiana. Let that sit. Not Texas, not Florida. Indiana, a state most Americans think of as something you fly over. And yet, it might be the most quietly well-positioned state in America. Here's the headline nobody covered properly. Eli Lilly is investing $9 billion in Indianapolis. Billion with a B, one company. Weight loss drugs, Alzheimer's treatments, diabetes medications, built and staffed in Indianapolis suburbs. The ripple effects are already visible. Pharmaceutical supply chain expanding, supporting industries relocating. This is transformative for a metro that was already stable. Indianapolis median home price, $280,000. For a metro of over 2 million people with diversified employment, cultural amenities, and major league sports. That math makes coastal transplants do double takes. One local. People from the coast have no framework for Indianapolis. They expect nothing. Find a real city where houses cost what a down payment costs back home. The confusion is priceless. Picture this: Spring and Mass Avenue district. Breweries, galleries, restaurants that aren't chains. Your house in Carmel costs $340,000. Yard, 2-car garage. Commute is 18 minutes on roads that move. Kids' school is excellent. You keep waiting for the catch. For families specifically, this is rare. Quality of life at middle-class prices. The suburbs, Carmel, Fishers, Zionsville, routinely rank among best places to raise kids. Not marketing. Measurable outcomes. Trade-offs: gray winters, conservative politics, no ocean or mountains, and limited opportunity outside the metro. But the Eli Lilly investment alone is transformative. $9 billion creates ripples for years. Indiana's math is increasingly hard to ignore. And that brings us to the final state. The one that shouldn't be on anyone's list. The one with no corporate headquarters, no billion-dollar investments, no reason on paper to exist as anything other than a cautionary tale. And that's exactly why what's happening there matters most. There's a moment in every underdog story where the audience decides whether to lean in or check out. This is that moment. The number one state on our list is West Virginia. Stay with me. West Virginia has been the punchline to American economic decline for half a century. Coal collapsed. Population cratered. Median household income around $52,000, among the lowest in the nation. Opioid crisis, political cliches. Every data point says this state should have been written off, and yet it's still here. And what it's doing with still here is remarkable. The most audacious move? Ascend West Virginia. $12,000 cash plus $2,500 in outdoor recreation perks for remote workers who relocate. No tricks. Thousands of applicants. More importantly, positive national press that isn't about decline for the first time in decades. But cash incentives are just the start. New River Gorge became America's newest national park in 2021. Mountain biking trails rivaling Bentonville. Whitewater, climbing, hiking. Natural assets being packaged and marketed like never before. Here's the money trail. Federal infrastructure money is landing hard. Roads, bridges, broadband through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Senator Manchin, whatever your politics, made sure his state didn't get overlooked. Housing costs remain almost comically low. Median statewide, $160,000. Charleston, $180,000. Historic Victorian in a walkable downtown, under $250,000. For remote workers earning coastal salaries, the arbitrage is staggering. One local. Everyone wrote us off. Maybe that's fine. Lower expectations, less competition. We're not trying to convince people. We're trying to outlast them. Picture this. Autumn in Fayette County. Deck overlooking New River Gorge, trees exploding orange and gold. You worked from a coffee shop this morning. Fiber internet, good espresso. Mortgage is $800. Your neighbors. A hedge fund analyst from Connecticut, a designer from Portland, and a family that's been here 5 generations. Trade-offs are real. Limited non-remote jobs, challenging healthcare access, population still declining statewide, significant cultural adjustment. The opioid crisis continues. The old economy isn't coming back. But West Virginia isn't denying its problems, it's working around them. Betting that remote workers can stabilize disappearing communities. Betting that outdoor recreation can anchor tourism. Betting that federal money can rebuild infrastructure. Is it working? Data is mixed. Too early to declare victory. But the bet is being placed anyway. With money, with programs, with marketing that acknowledges problems while selling possibility. Remember the hook. $12,000 to move to a state everyone treats as a punchline? That state looked at the map and decided, if everyone thinks you're finished, you've got nothing to lose. West Virginia is playing the longest game, and 2026 is when the country starts watching whether the punchline becomes proof of concept. 10 states, 10 different bets, 10 different answers to the same question. Where is America actually going? Maine is betting on climate migration before everyone else figures it out. Montana is catching the spillover from its own hype. New Mexico is diversifying into film, space, and everything weird. Tennessee is distributing Nashville's success to cities that earned their own shot. Ohio is rebuilding manufacturing for the 21st century. Arkansas is proving that enough money can manufacture culture. Alabama is monetizing rockets while nobody watches. Arizona is gambling on chips while praying for water. Indiana is stacking advantages in silence. And West Virginia is swinging for the fences because there's nothing left to lose. The common thread isn't geography, it isn't politics, it isn't luck, it's positioning. Every state on this list understood something that will define 2026. Attention follows opportunity, but opportunity has to be built. You can have natural beauty and cheap housing and remain invisible forever. Or you can create the conditions, incentives, infrastructure, investment that turn potential into momentum. Not all of these bets will pay off. Some of these states will be on very different lists in 5 years. That's the nature of asymmetric risk. But here's what's certain. The map is being redrawn. The states that dominated attention for the last decade aren't necessarily the states that will dominate the next one. And if you're thinking about where to live, where to invest, where opportunity is actually headed, the default answers aren't good enough anymore. If this changed how you think about American geography, hit subscribe. If you know someone still convinced that opportunity only exists on the coasts, send them this video. Drop a comment telling us which state surprised you most, or which one you think we got completely wrong. The future doesn't announce itself. You have to go looking. We just told you where to start.